Houston, 2017, 3:17 in the morning. Sunday, August 27th, 2017. Joe Garcia wakes up to cold water on his face. Not a dream, not a leak. Water, inside his bedroom, moving, rising, already past the mattress frame. He doesn't think. He grabs his wife's arm in the dark. She's already sitting up, already silent. The silence of someone who understands exactly what is happening and cannot say it out loud. Their two kids are in the next room. Joe doesn't walk. He runs. Here is what 60 inches of rain looks like at 3 in the morning. It looks like your hallway becoming a river. It looks like your children's drawings floating off the refrigerator. It looks like your wife holding a 7-year-old above her head on the staircase while you dig through a closet for a flashlight you haven't touched in 4 years. It looks like everything you built, slowly, carefully, over a lifetime, disappearing under black water in the dark. And it looks like this in 30,000 homes, simultaneously, right now. Go back 4 days, Thursday, August 24th, Gulf of Mexico. A loose cluster of thunderstorms drifts northwest, disorganized, unremarkable, the kind of system that forms every August and dies before it becomes anyone's problem. But underneath it, the water is wrong. The Bay of Campeche is sitting at 86 degrees Fahrenheit, not unusual on the surface, catastrophic underneath, because this heat doesn't stop at 10 feet or 30 feet or 50. It goes deep, and deep warm water is what a dying storm drinks to come back to life. Harvey drinks. Within 36 hours, it has a name. Within 40, it is a Category 4 hurricane. That jump from disorganized cluster to major hurricane in less than 2 days is one of the fastest ever recorded in the Gulf. Meteorologists watching their screens use a word they almost never put in official forecasts: explosive. But the wind isn't what terrifies them. It's the models. Because the models are showing something else entirely, something that has no precedent in the history of North American weather. Harvey is going to stop. High-pressure systems locked on both sides will trap it directly over southeast Texas. It won't push inland. It won't curve northeast. It will park itself over Houston like a fist pressed against a table and pull moisture from the Gulf endlessly, mechanically, without stopping. The National Weather Service forecasters who see this projection start using language they are trained to avoid. Catastrophic, unprecedented, life-threatening, not as emphasis, as precise, literal description. The warnings go out, every single one of them accurate. Now here is the number: 60 inches of rain, 4 days, 1 city, not 60 millimeters, not 6 inches, 5 feet of water falling from the sky over a single metropolitan area, shattering every rainfall record ever recorded from a single storm in United States history. By a margin so large that meteorologists will spend years trying to find the right words for it. They won't find them. In Joe Garcia's neighborhood, East Houston, working class, wood frame houses built on flat land with no basements and no drainage. Almost nobody evacuates, not because they're careless, not because they don't understand danger, because a hotel 3 counties away costs money Joe doesn't have, because the highway out of the city floods before the storm does, because nobody from any government office calls his street, knocks on his door, or tells him clearly, specifically, with enough urgency to make it real. You need to leave tonight. The forecast was perfect. The warning system worked exactly as designed. And Joe Garcia is standing in chest-deep water at 3 in the morning, wondering why nobody told him. Back to the staircase. His phone, 11% battery, kids above the waterline, wife beside him. He looks up at the attic hatch, makes the only decision left. In thousands of homes across Houston, at this exact moment, thousands of people are making the same one, climbing toward their ceilings, away from the water, not knowing that the attic can become a tomb if the water keeps rising and you have nothing to break through the roof with. Some of them have an axe. Most don't. If this is hitting you, hit that like button. It takes 1 second, and it means everything for this channel. 5 a.m. Sunday. August 27th, the 911 emergency system for the city of Houston, built to handle 6,000 calls per day, receives 56,000 calls in a single hour. The line doesn't ring busy, it doesn't redirect, it simply goes silent. Operators are screaming into headsets, cycling through calls faster than humanly possible, triaging by sound. A crying child gets priority over a crying adult, a collapsing roof over a flooded car. They work until their hands shake. It makes no difference. The math is impossible, and the water is still rising. Joe Garcia is in his attic, phone at 6%, flashlight propped against a rafter. His daughter is asleep against his shoulder, the deep, exhausted sleep of a child who cried until she couldn't anymore. His wife is awake. They don't speak. There's nothing to say that the sound of rain on the roof isn't already saying louder. He dials 911. Busy. He dials again. Busy. He opens Facebook, types their address. Types, water still rising. Please help. We are in the attic, 2 kids. Posts it to a community group he joined 3 years ago and never looked at again. Then he watches the battery drop to 4%. Here is what nobody tells you about Houston. The city was built on a swamp, literally. The founders knew it. The engineers knew it. Decades of city planners knew it. Houston sits on flat, impermeable clay, land that doesn't absorb water, land that was never supposed to hold 4 million people, and 50 years of concrete and asphalt and parking lots that turned every square mile into a surface that sheds rain like a tin roof. The 2 reservoirs built to protect the city, Addicks and Barker, were constructed in the 1940s, designed for a city of 400,000. They are now surrounded by 170,000 homes that were built inside the reservoir flood pool, legally, with permits, with full knowledge of what would happen if those reservoirs ever filled. On Sunday morning, they fill. The Army Corps of Engineers makes the decision at 2 a.m. Before most of Houston is even awake. The reservoirs are at capacity. If the dams fail, the flooding will be catastrophic and uncontrolled. The only option is a controlled release. Open the gates. Deliberately flood the neighborhoods downstream. Those neighborhoods are never directly notified. 30,000 homes go underwater by choice, not by storm, not by accident,
Can anyone hear
but
us?
by a decision made in
now.
a government office at 2 in the morning while the people inside those homes were asleep. Joe Garcia's street is one of them. And then, from the east, they come. Not police, not FEMA, not the National Guard. Pickup trucks, hundreds of them. Pulling flat-bottom fishing boats down I-10 in the rain, headlights cutting through the dark. They are volunteers from Louisiana, from East Texas, from small towns whose names Houston couldn't find on a map. Cajun Navy, a name that started as a joke after Katrina and became the most effective rescue operation in the history of American flooding. They don't wait for authorization. They don't file paperwork. They back their trailers off highway overpasses directly into the floodwater and launch. They navigate submerged streets by memory and instinct, reading rooftops like coordinates, listening for voices above the rain. They pull grandmothers through second-story windows. They carry infants in life jackets made from couch cushions. One volunteer makes 11 trips in a single night, into the dark, into the current, back and forth until his fuel runs out and he paddles the last stretch by hand. No badge, no training, no compensation, just a boat and the understanding that someone is waiting. At 6:43 a.m., a man in a base boat turns onto Joe Garcia's street. He sees a phone flashlight blinking through an attic vent. Here's what I want to know from you. Have you ever been in a moment where a complete stranger showed up when no system did? A neighbor, a passerby, someone whose name you never got, but who changed everything? Drop it in the comments. Because what happened in Houston that night wasn't an accident, it was a pattern, and it shows up every single time the official infrastructure collapses. Every single time. The rain stopped on Wednesday, August 30th. Harvey finally moved northeast toward Louisiana. The clouds broke. For the first time in 5 days, Houston saw sunlight. It didn't feel like relief. It felt like the moment after an explosion, when the noise stops and you look around and count what's left. The answer for most of East Houston was not much. Joe Garcia steps out of his front door for the first time in 4 days. The street is silent. Everything is covered in a gray film, mud, insulation, the contents of other people's lives. A child's bicycle against a stop sign, someone's wedding photos face down in the gutter. 3 houses down, an entire wall is missing, just gone, like a dollhouse opened from the side. Joe walks back inside, looks at the water line on his kitchen wall, 4 feet, 2 inches above the floor. He takes a photograph of it. He doesn't know why. He just knows he needs proof that this was real. Here are the final numbers. Harvey dropped more rain than any storm in recorded American history. 60.58 inches in a single location. Over 300,000 structures flooded across southeast Texas. The total damage, $125 billion, tying Hurricane Katrina as the costliest natural disaster in United States history. 103 people died. But here is the number that doesn't make the headlines. 80% of homeowners in the flooded zones had no flood insurance, not because they were reckless, because flood insurance in America is a separate policy that costs hundreds of dollars a year. And in working-class Houston, hundreds of dollars a year is groceries. It's a car payment. It's the electric bill in August. FEMA disaster loans are available. They carry interest. Repayment begins in months for families who just lost everything, including the jobs that would pay those loans back. Joe Garcia applies for assistance. He waits 4 months for a response. The response is a partial denial. 2 years after Harvey, researchers from Rice University publish a study on Houston's recovery. The findings are precise and devastating. Wealthy neighborhoods, fully rebuilt, new floors, new walls, new everything, faster than anyone expected. Working-class neighborhoods in East Houston, 40% of residents have not returned. The lots sit empty, not because no one wants to rebuild, because the people who live there cannot afford to. The storm did not flood randomly. The recovery did not distribute equally. And the reservoirs that were deliberately opened that Sunday morning, the ones that sent water into 30,000 homes while their owners slept, those homeowners sue the Army Corps of Engineers. They win. The government pays settlements averaging $4,000 per household. $4,000 for everything you owned. Harvey permanently changed how meteorologists classify hurricanes. Category 4, wind. Category 1 when it made second landfall. On paper, a weakening storm. In reality, the most expensive rainfall disaster in American history. The lesson is the same one written in the wreckage of Joplin, of Katrina, of every disaster before and since. The forecast was accurate. The warnings were real. The system worked exactly as designed. The people who died, who lost everything, who never came back, they weren't failed by the weather. They were failed long before the storm formed in the Gulf. Joe Garcia still lives in Houston, different neighborhood, rents now. He kept one thing from the old house, the photograph of that water line on his kitchen wall. 4 feet, 2 inches. He says he keeps it to remember. I think he keeps it because nobody official ever told him they were sorry. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. There are people whose stories are still waiting to be told. And this channel exists for exactly that. Every disaster has a number. Every number has a name. Let's keep saying them.